Hello folks, and welcome back to Black Glory. Today's story follows Liu Yun's transformative encounter with her neighbor Kevin, a black man fluent in Mandarin who challenges stereotypes and discrimination in China. Kevin's upbringing in China, his resilience against prejudice in the US, and his determination to excel despite societal barriers inspire Liu to confront ignorance and advocate for inclusivity. What has happened? Let's find out. Before we get into the main content of the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive updates on our latest videos. Feel free to leave your comments with feedback on the content and any topics you're interested in. Your support means a lot to us. Have a great day. My name is Liu Yun. Growing up in China, I was always told that black people were stupid and had no value. I had never met a black person before, but from what I saw in the media, they were portrayed as ignorant and unable to speak languages other than their own. That was until a black man moved into my neighborhood and proved me wrong. I was out for a walk one day when I noticed a moving truck outside of my neighbor's house. Curiosity getting the better of me, I went to investigate. As I walked closer, I saw a tall, muscular man with dark skin directing the movers. I was surprised to see that he was speaking Chinese fluently. I couldn't help but stare at him in amazement. I had never seen a black person speak Chinese before. In fact, I had never even heard of a black person living in China. When he noticed me, he waved, said hello, and introduced himself in perfect Mandarin. I was speechless. I couldn't resist the urge to engage him in conversation, to unravel the mystery of his background and experiences. How had he come to speak Chinese so fluently? What was his story? He chuckled and told me that he was born and raised in China. Imagine this, he began with a wry smile. I was born in China. My mom is Chinese, my dad is African American, and I grew up speaking the language at home. But because of how I look, people would often assume that I couldn't speak Chinese at all. He then proceeded to tell me that he had moved back to China after living in the United States for a few years. He told me that growing up in the US was tough. People would look at me and automatically assume that I wasn't as smart as my peers, he explained, his tone somber yet defiant. But I refused to let their narrow-mindedness hold me back. I made it my mission to excel in everything I did, to prove them wrong at every turn. And excel he did. His determination and perseverance propelled him to success in both his academic and professional pursuits. He spoke proudly of his accomplishments, of the countless hours he had dedicated to mastering the Chinese language and reclaiming his identity in a society that sought to diminish it. I poured myself into my studies, spending countless hours mastering the Chinese language and immersing myself in my culture. It wasn't just about reclaiming my identity, it was about reclaiming my voice in a society that sought to silence me. That's incredible, I replied, genuinely impressed by his tenacity. Kevin's smile widened as he spoke, a sense of pride evident in his words. And you know what? It paid off. I graduated top of my class with honors, no less. It was a moment of triumph, a validation of all the hard work and dedication I had poured into my education. But Kevin wasn't done yet. And it didn't stop there, he continued, his voice tinged with excitement. I went on to pursue a career in Chinese, and let me tell you, it wasn't easy breaking into the industry. But I refused to be deterred. I worked tirelessly, honing my skills and proving my worth every step of the way. One day, Kevin and I were out for a walk, and we ran into a group of Chinese girls. They were staring at Kevin with wide eyes, and I could tell they were whispering about him. As they passed by us, I overheard one of them saying, "Look at that black guy. He could really speak Chinese." Her tone was laced with sarcasm. I was appalled. How could these girls, who had probably never even spoken to a black person before, make such a judgment based on his race? It was clear that the media's portrayal of black people had influenced even the younger generation's perceptions. I found myself grappling with a sense of frustration and indignation at the way in which black people were often depicted in the media, as caricatures, stereotypes, devoid of nuance or complexity. From Hollywood films to television shows to news coverage, The representation of black individuals was often limited to narrow, one-dimensional portrayals that reinforced harmful stereotypes and perpetuated negative perceptions. It was a vicious cycle. The media perpetuated stereotypes, which in turn influenced societal attitudes and behaviors towards black people, further reinforcing the stereotypes. And as a result, individuals like Kevin were unfairly judged and marginalized, their talents and abilities overlooked and dismissed because of the color of their skin. As we stood there, I couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency to challenge these harmful narratives, to dismantle the stereotypes that had been ingrained in our collective consciousness. It was a daunting task, but one that was necessary if we were ever to achieve true equality and justice for all. "Excuse me?" I called out, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. The girls stopped in their tracks, turning to face me with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I couldn't help but overhear your comments about my friend," I said, my tone firm but measured. "And I have to say, I find them deeply offensive and ignorant." The girls exchanged nervous glances, their earlier bravado fading in the face of my confrontation. One of them, the one who had made the initial remark, shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. "I'm sorry, we didn't mean anything by it," she stammered, her words tinged with embarrassment. "But that's exactly the problem," I replied, my voice rising with conviction. "By reducing my friend to nothing more than his race, you perpetuate harmful stereotypes and contribute to the discrimination and marginalization of black people." The girls remained silent, their eyes downcast as I continued to speak, my words fueled by a sense of righteous indignation. Black people are not monolithic. They are individuals with their own unique experiences, talents, and abilities. To judge them solely based on the color of their skin is not only ignorant, it's downright discriminatory. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, the tension palpable as the girls struggled to process what I had said. And though I knew that I couldn't change their views overnight, I hoped that my words had planted a seed of doubt, a seed that would one day grow into a more nuanced and empathetic understanding of race and identity. As Kevin shared more of his story with me, he opened up about another significant aspect of his life, his relationship with a Chinese woman. It was a topic he approached with a mix of vulnerability and pride, revealing the complexities and challenges he had faced as a black man navigating interracial dating in China. "I remember when I first met her," Kevin began, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips. "She was beautiful, with her dark hair cascading down her shoulders and her eyes sparkling with curiosity. From the moment we met, there was a connection between us, a spark that ignited something deep within me. But their budding romance was not without its challenges. As Kevin shared with me, one of the biggest hurdles they faced was the language barrier, not in the traditional sense, but rather in the form of accents. Despite his fluency in Mandarin, Kevin spoke with a distinct American accent, a remnant of his years spent living in the United States. "At first it was hard," Kevin admitted, his expression growing somber as he recalled the early days of their relationship. "She would often get frustrated with me, accusing me of not speaking proper Chinese. She would shout at me, telling me that my accent made it difficult for her to understand me. It took time, but eventually we found our rhythm," Kevin said, a note of pride in his voice. "We learned to embrace our differences, celebrating the diversity that brought us together. And in doing so, we discovered a deeper connection, one that transcended language and culture." As their relationship blossomed, Kevin and his girlfriend embarked on a journey of mutual growth and self-discovery. They shared their hopes and dreams, their fears and insecurities, building a foundation of trust and respect that would withstand the tests of time. "And you know what?" Kevin said, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. "In the end, it was those differences that made our relationship special. They say that opposites attract, and I think there's some truth to that. We complemented each other in ways we never could have imagined, challenging each other to be better versions of ourselves." The notion of blending into a culture as distinct and deeply rooted as Chinese culture presents a formidable challenge for anyone, regardless of their background. In Chinese culture, there exists a pervasive sense of national pride and superiority, fueled by centuries of history and tradition. From the majestic Forbidden City to the enduring philosophies of Confucianism, China has long been celebrated as a bastion of civilization and cultural heritage. And yet, this pride often veers dangerously close to arrogance, with some Chinese people harboring a belief in their inherent superiority over other nations and cultures. For Kevin, this sense of superiority manifested itself in subtle yet pervasive ways, shaping his interactions with his Chinese peers and acquaintances. From casual remarks about his appearance to more overt displays of condescension, Kevin often found himself on the receiving end of microaggressions and discriminatory behavior. But beneath the veneer of cultural pride lay a deeper truth: the undeniable fact that no culture is inherently superior to another. While Chinese culture boasts a rich tapestry of history and tradition, it is not immune to the flaws and shortcomings that plague all societies. For example, from issues of racism to the marginalization of ethnic minorities, China, like any other nation, grapples with its own set of challenges and contradictions. Racism, unfortunately, is not an issue confined to any one corner of the globe. In China, as in many other countries, racial prejudices and biases persist, often manifesting in subtle yet harmful ways. From discriminatory hiring practices to the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes in the media, people of African descent in particular have long faced discrimination and marginalization in Chinese society. This systemic racism is deeply rooted in historical and cultural factors, including China's own history of colonialism and imperialism. Throughout history, China has been subject to foreign invasion and exploitation, leading to a lingering mistrust and resentment towards outsiders. This historical context has contributed to the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes and prejudices against people of African descent, who are often viewed as other and foreign in Chinese society. Furthermore, China's rapid economic development and globalization have brought with them a host of new challenges, including increased migration and cultural diversity. While this diversity can enrich society in many ways, it also presents new opportunities for discrimination and prejudice. People of African descent, in particular, often find themselves at the receiving end of discrimination and harassment, both in their personal and professional lives. The marginalization of ethnic minorities is another pressing issue facing China today. Despite the country's official policy of promoting ethnic unity and equality, ethnic minorities continue to face barriers to education, employment, and social mobility. In some cases, they are subjected to forced assimilation and cultural erasure as the Chinese government seeks to impose its own vision of national unity and homogeneity. Tibetans, Uyghurs, and other minority groups have long struggled to preserve their cultural identity and autonomy in the face of Chinese repression. From restrictions on religious practice to mass surveillance and detention, ethnic minorities in China face a host of human rights abuses and violations. The Chinese government's policies towards ethnic minorities have drawn widespread condemnation from the international community, with many accusing Beijing of cultural genocide and ethnic cleansing. Human rights organizations and advocacy groups have documented numerous instances of human rights abuses in Xinjiang, Tibet, and other minority regions, calling for greater transparency and accountability from the Chinese government. In recent years, the plight of ethnic minorities in China has gained increased attention on the world stage, sparking calls for action and solidarity from activists and policymakers around the globe. From boycotts of Chinese products to diplomatic pressure on Beijing, the international community has begun to take a stand against China's human rights abuses, demanding justice and accountability for those affected. Reflecting on Kevin's journey and the broader issues of race and identity in China, I realized that change begins with individuals, with everyday people like you and me. By confronting our own biases and prejudices, by challenging harmful stereotypes and discrimination wherever we encounter them, we can begin to build a more equitable and inclusive society for all. As Kevin and I continued our walk, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Together, we had confronted ignorance and prejudice head-on, challenging harmful stereotypes and advocating for a more just and inclusive society. And while the road ahead may be long and difficult, I knew that as long as we stood together, we could overcome any obstacle. As we parted ways, Kevin turned to me with a smile. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude, "for standing up for me, for challenging those girls' ignorance. It means more than you know." I nodded, returning his smile with one of my own. "No, thank you," I replied, "for opening my eyes, for showing me that we are more alike than we are different, and for reminding me that together we can change the world." David's experience as a black man living in China opened my eyes to the discrimination and stereotypes faced by people of color. But most importantly, he showed me that these stereotypes were far from the truth. Behind every race and ethnicity, there are individuals with unique talents and abilities. And so, as I walked home, I made a silent vow to carry Kevin's story with me, to share it with others, and to continue fighting for a world where everyone is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. It may be a long and difficult journey, but with each step we take, we move closer to a more just and equitable future for all.